Melbourne Fringe presents Access and Inclusion in the Arts. Accessibility for audiences.
What's your name?
Prue Stevenson.
Hi, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm David Baker.
Hi, I'm Maysa.
Hey, I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Carly Findlay. I work as the Access and Inclusion Coordinator at Melbourne Fringe, and today we are talking about access and inclusion in the arts.
What events do you like to attend?
I do like to go to my friends' performances and exhibition openings.
Melbourne Comedy Festival is like the highlight of my year, like it's my grand final.
I'd say a variety. I usually tend to focus on theatre sort of style events, but visual arts or dance.
I've gotten into going to art exhibitions recently and found some like cool small galleries that are actually accessible.
For me personally, with being an artist with a disability, I love being open.
Music events, yeah. I have a tendency to avoid stand-up comedy for obvious reason.
Other people with disability making art as well, that is really self-encouraging and really awesome to go see.
But if it's accessible for me, like, if it's captioned or I can see, then it's visual theatre, and cheap tickets, of course.
Really like live music, but a lot of live music is very not accessible.
It just depends how my capacity is in that moment of time.
I also enjoy going along visiting workshops.
How does it feel when you're welcomed at an event?
It feels really warm, really considered, that I'm considered as a person. Feels like that I belong.
Yeah, I like people saying hello. Sometimes I'm non-verbal. I might be really excited about an event, and so I've got a lot to self-manage with sensory perception and with emotions and just my overall autistic needs.
Everyone is different. Respect me as you would respect yourself.
I think it's when people do a whole lot of little things. It feels like simple and obvious when they do it, but it's stuff that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of for yourself before.
I find that when I get to an event, sometimes I might have a lot of energy and be jumping all around the place, really autistic. It's fun. And I might get tired and be non-verbal. So I guess sometimes it's difficult to get welcome because there's a social expectation there that I need to make eye contact and I need to be verbal, which can be tricky. Just play it by ear and maybe wave, but not make that expectation.
What makes good access for you?
Having good foot space, especially when you're a guide dog handler.
So thinking about people, who your audience is, who you're providing an experience for, it's okay if you exclude a group of people, but you just need to be really clear about that.
A quiet room is a big one. Traveling to an event is a lot of information already, and being in a new environment is a lot. To get a bit of respite before the show or after can help me a lot, because then I have less sensory input and my brain can kind of have some downtime to process what's happened, and then I can go in and watch the show.
I love intervals. Big fan of intervals. I'd rather have a show that was 5 hours but with several intervals than a show with that's 2 hours solid.
Yeah.
From really, an experience, from the beginning to the end of the experience, not just a caption show, but how information is received, the experience of buying tickets, getting there, being part of watching the performance or being part of it. leaving the performance at the end. So the whole experience.
My favourite events are usually ones that are like a quiet session, a relaxed session, where the doors are open and so you can come in and out, and there might be bean bags, and it's not like you need to sit still and be quiet the whole time, because that takes a lot of energy.
When it comes to front of house as an usher, I personally don't like seeing a lot of clutter.
So audio description is a service for visually impaired, and it's a hearing loop. It's a little radio device with a headphone, and then someone at the back of in another room is watching it on a screen and saying what's happening on the stage. Yeah, so when it's done artistically and with meaning, that's when it's useful. But when it's done very systematically, kind of that, it ruins the art of the piece.
Things like chill out spaces, so people can kind of go in and out of the artwork.
When there are other people from my community that, they're in the audience and something happens and they're stimming and just laughing and screaming, that makes me feel really comfortable.
A lot of access is like stuff that's easy to fix and cheap, if not free. A baseline where even folks who are not disabled go, okay, we're going to do these 5 things that mean that at least some folks with disabilities can come to our show or our exhibition.
Yeah. People need access requirements. If they want to be let in early, they can be let in early to actually help them settle, obviously. Yeah.
So planning is important, I think.
What access advice do you have for theatre makers?
It helps to get spoilers of the show, which meant that I could know what was going to happen, know when the loud noises would happen, and what kind of information, a gist of it. And then in the show, I brought my earplugs, and so I'm in that way. If I know what's going to happen, then I can self-manage by bringing things like my earplugs and some Fidget by Design objects to get positive sensory feedback.
Usually captions or Auslan included, or something that's high visual rating.
I might need some guidance from an usher, because everyone does.
Knowing some Auslan skills, for example, can also help autistic people, because sometimes we're non-verbal.
If it's music, just standing next to the speakers.
Use pictures, so if we need directions to somewhere, that you could draw a picture direction as opposed to lots of detailed instructions. Or if we're getting overloaded, that it's less words, so there's less to process. And also to have autism training for meltdowns. That's a really big one. People try to touch us when we're having meltdowns. It can be very painful.
I went to a theatre in the UK where they give out the scripts freely. You say I'm deaf, they'll give you a book so you can read before you see the shows.
A lot of our community like to wear things that might seem inappropriate to venues, like hats and hoodies and sunglasses. And I think that it's important to have an open mind around those things, because a lot of the time people can get headaches from fluorescent lights or just get hypersensitive. And having beanbags is really helpful because it's like a hug, and that can feel nice.
Do your access needs differ from your peers?
First of all, I stand out because I walk around with a 30-kilo Labrador. That's a guide dog, so I'm pretty much brown girl with a Labrador. So that makes me unique.
All our brains are wired differently, so we all have different access needs.
I have Asperger's, and sometimes as well, and also part of my hearing impairment. I don't like too much noise, so noisy environments for me is like...
Everybody needs some downtime because they're processing a lot of information, especially in today's world.
And it's taken me a while in my adult life to be able to say and assert what I need when I go as an audience member.
Even just simple things like being able to, knowing that if I miss a show on one night, I can go on another night.
It happens to me. Sometimes I go into the men's toilets without realising, thinking that is the women's toilets. It's hilarious, but it does happen.
Yeah, the transport thing is a big help. Yeah.
What events do you wish were easier to attend?
It would be really awesome to go to my first festival. I haven't had the courage to do it yet.
The comedy festival, I think it would be helpful to have autistic interpreters to some shows, kind of like Auslan interpreters, but for autistic people, because some jokes are really difficult to get. Like if someone was walking around with a ladder or a banana peel, I get it, it's slapstick. But if it's like sarcastic jokes or jokes that have a lot of idioms in them, then it will not be accessible for me. But again, it depends on the autistic person. Some autistic people love sarcasm. I'm just not one of those.
I would love to go see more theatre. I would love to go see more comedy. I think that would make me grow as an artist as well, seeing other people's work.
Any other advice?
It can be scary at first. For me, access for my work, it's for the majority, because my work is in Auslan, so it's accessible to deaf people. So my access is different to other theatre makers' access. So, they're thinking about a deaf audience where, and having interpreters. For me, I have voiceover for people who don't know Auslan. So when people are asking me about access, it's really a bit strange because my access looks different for different audiences. But, at the same time, it can be an enjoyable process. It can be, a big learning process, a huge learning process. And just one step at a time, just do it that way. Ask people. Go, see shows, theatre, accessible shows, talk to people about what they like. Talk to the audience. Just take it all in. And then make your own access. So you can be non-traditional.
We've got a saying in the autistic community that if you know one person with autism, you know one person with autism.
We can actually create some awesome art. We really can. Our stories deserve to be told.
Melbourne Fringe's access and inclusion work.
So Melbourne Fringe does a range of things to make things accessible for artists, producers, venues and audiences. So we provide information to artists and producers about how they can make their events accessible. We check in with venues and talk about accessibility and then write that information on our website when the program is launched. We also help artists find ways of making their shows accessible, so providing information about how to get an Auslan interpreter, how to make event relaxed performance, how to communicate that to staff, because it's all very well and good that they've made a accessible show, but they should reach the right communities that will see that accessible show. So we provide information about that. We also help artists with disability or deaf artists register for the show, take part in the festival, communicate to audiences. We provide some grants and mentorships to artists with disability and without, and that will help them become better producers and learn about the arts industry and learn about Melbourne Fringe and make their own show. During the festival, we talk to artists and we see how they're going. I met with a lot of different artists who made art and who saw art that identified as a person with disability or deaf during the festival, and made sure that they were having a great time and take on information and see how we can improve for next year.
Go to melbournefringe.com.au for more info.